You see, they only clap when the circus is in town. They only look your way when you bleed in colors that entertain them. They never see you when you're building, only when you're breaking. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. You were trying to be real in a world full of plastic, and you thought they'd notice? You thought they'd love you for your honesty? They don't love real. Real scares them. Real exposes them. Real makes them uncomfortable. So what do? They laugh. They gossip. They ignore. Until you disappear. Then suddenly, you were one of a kind. Suddenly, you were irreplaceable. And that's the joke, kid. That's the biggest joke of all. They wait until your fire burns out to admit you were the only light they had. They'll learn too late what you were worth. But by then you're long gone, and you're not coming back for their pity. Not this time. You gave them loyalty, thinking they'd return it. You gave them time, attention, effort. Hell, you gave them you. And they still chose to treat you like an option. Like you weren't good enough. Like you didn't matter. But let me tell you something they'll never say out loud. It was never about you not being enough. It was about them not being ready for someone real. They knew damn well you were rare, but they convinced themselves they could find better, easier, cheaper, so they left you on red. They made you beg for the bare minimum. They entertained others while you were building dreams around them. And when you finally had enough and walked away without a sound, that silence, it screamed louder than every word you ever said. That silence haunts them because they know, deep down they know they fucked up something they'll never find again. But pride won't let them say it. You ever noticed how they all come back when you stop caring? That's not coincidence. That's consequence. They don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves that felt important when you were around. You were the mirror they used to hide from their own mess. And when you left, you took that mirror with you. Now they're stuck facing who they really are. Empty, fake, ungrateful. That's the beauty of walking away without warning. You don't owe closure to people who opened the door for your pain. You don't need to explain your absence to people who never questioned your silence when you needed them. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them marinate in the guilt they buried. And if they try to come back with "I miss you," just smile. Not because you forgive them, but because you finally realized that losing you was their lesson, not your loss. The hardest part of being a good soul in this rotten world is realizing that being good doesn't mean you'll be treated good. In fact, the more you love, the more you'll be tested. The more you give, the more they'll take. Until you're empty. Until you're drained. And still, they'll ask why you're so cold, as if they didn't freeze you first. But here's where the twist comes in. That pain they gave you, that betrayal, that abandonment, you don't bury it. You build with it. You use it. You turn it into silence, and you let that silence become power. Because when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, when you stop caring, that's when they panic. That's when they realize you were never the problem. You were the proof that they needed to grow up, and they chose to stay small. And now they've got to live with that decision. You're done explaining your worth to people who saw it and still acted blind. They never saw the nights you spent questioning yourself, did they? The nights you sat in silence, wondering what else you could give, what else you could fix, what more you had to break in yourself, just to be enough for people who never even deserved a glimpse of you. They never saw the battles you fought alone while smiling for them. They never saw the way you swallowed your pain so they could feel peace. And the cruelest part? They mistook your silence for weakness. They thought because you didn't scream, you didn't suffer. Because you didn't complain, you didn't feel. But suffering in silence, that's the strongest kind of pain. And now, when your silence becomes your boundary, when your absence becomes your protection, they'll call you cold, distant, heartless. But where was that energy when you were bleeding emotionally, hoping someone would notice you were drowning without saying a word? Now they miss you, but not because they loved you, because they lost control. You were their comfort, their safety net, their emotional punching bag. But you outgrew that role. You're not their fool anymore. And don't you dare feel guilty for it. Don't you dare feel bad for healing in private and leaving people behind who only knew how to wound you. This world feeds on guilt. It uses your kindness like currency. And when it's drained you, it spits you out and acts like you were never worth anything. But you were. You always were. And now that you've gone quiet, now that you've started choosing yourself, they feel it. They feel the absence of your energy, your attention, your time. You were their warmth in a world of cold shoulders, and they replaced you with temporary distractions, thinking they'd find better. But what they didn't realize was there is no better version of someone who would have walked through hell barefoot just to make sure they were okay. That kind of heart doesn't come twice. It doesn't repeat itself. And when they finally understand what they had, it'll be too late. Because once you become at peace with being alone, you stop begging to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You were never hard to love. You were just expecting loyalty in a world that treats people like seasons, temporary, replaceable, forgettable. They want your sunshine, but they'll vanish when it rains. They'll eat from your table, but starve you when it's your turn to need. And the worst part? They'll act confused when you finally walk away. They'll call you changed, as if you became the villain for deciding to protect your peace. But you didn't change. You just stopped allowing your worth to be negotiated by people who never knew how to value it. Let them think you're heartless. Let them gossip. Let them lie. Let them write their own version of the story. Because the truth is something they can't handle. The truth is they lost the only real one in their life, and they'll spend the rest of their days searching for pieces of you and people who will never compare. But you've already made peace with the fact that they'll learn too late what you were worth. You gave them access to your soul. You handed them the rarest thing a person could give, genuine presence. You weren't perfect, but you were real. You stood by them when it cost you your own peace. You stayed when it was easier to leave. You forgave things that broke you just to keep them close. And in return, they made you feel like you were asking for too much, like needing to be seen, heard, and appreciated was a burden, like your love was a favor they were doing you. But what they failed to understand is that your presence was the blessing. Your loyalty was the gift. And now that you've withdrawn it, now that you've chosen silence over confrontation, distance over drama, they realize. They realize too late that silence is not empty. It's full of everything they ignored, every word you never said, every tear you never showed, every time you swallowed pain just to keep the peace. That silence, it's screaming now, and all they can do is sit with it and remember you. They'll replay the memories like reruns of a show they took for granted. Every smile you gave them, every time you picked up their broken pieces, while your hands were already bleeding. And trust me, they'll feel it. They'll feel that cold sting of reality when they reach out, and there's nothing on the other side. No answer, no softness, no comfort, just absence. That's your justice. Not revenge, not hatred, just absence. That quiet, cruel lesson that teaches them the cost of treating a loyal heart like a temporary convenience. They'll sit in rooms full of people and still feel your absence echoing through their chest. Not because they want you back, but because they can't unsee the way you love them. You love them like no one else could. And that kind of love leaves scars when it's gone, deep ones. The kind that don't bleed, but burn. The kind they'll hide behind fake smiles and loud crowds, hoping no one sees how hollow they feel inside without you. And maybe you're still hurting. Maybe you're still processing the weight of everything they put you through. That's okay. Healing isn't pretty. It's messy. It's quiet. It's screaming into pillows and pretending you're fine when the weight in your chest says otherwise. But let me tell you this. You're not broken. You're rebuilding. You're not weak for feeling. You're strong for surviving. You carried people who would have dropped you without a second thought. You loved those who only knew how to take. And even now, with scars on your soul and silence in your mouth, you're still standing. that alone makes you dangerous. Because when a kind soul becomes quiet, that's not weakness, it's transformation. It means you've seen enough, felt enough, been drained enough to understand that peace is more valuable than attention. That solitude is safer than fake company. That walking alone is better than running in circles for people who wouldn't crawl an inch for you. Now you move differently. You speak less, watch more. You don't explain, you don't beg, you don't chase. Because you've realized that people who care won't need a reminder, and people who don't won't change no matter how much you give. So you give to yourself now, your time, your energy, your love. You feed your own soul instead of starving it for others. And suddenly, you see things clearly. You see how temporary their loyalty was, how fragile their love really was, how quick they flipped when things weren't about them. That clarity, that's your superpower. It hurts at first, but eventually, it sets you free. Because once you stop lying to yourself about who they are, you stop needing them. You stop romanticizing pain, and you start rebuilding quietly, powerfully, relentlessly. And when they finally come back, when they realize they lost something rare, something they can't replace, you'll smile. Not because you want them again, but because you finally want yourself more. People will always realize what they had when it's gone. That's human nature. We take things for granted until they stop showing up. And by then, it's too late. The calls go unanswered. The messages stay unread. The door they used to walk through like they owned the place, it's locked now. Not out of spite, but out of protection. You protected them when you were bleeding. Now you protect yourself. And they'll call it cold. They'll call it ego. But let them. Let them say whatever they need to say to sleep at night. Your truth doesn't need their validation. You don't owe them a single explanation for your peace. They chose their comfort over your pain too many times. Now, you choose silence over their chaos. And the funny thing, that silence hurts them more than any words ever could. Because now they have to sit with the truth that you were always enough, and they just didn't have the eyes to see it. Until now. Until it's too damn late. They'll scroll through old photos, stare at conversations they once left unseen, and wonder how the hell they let someone like you slip through their fingers. But regret is a slow poison, and you were the cure they ignored. They thought you'd always be there, thought your loyalty was eternal, thought your patience was infinite. But even the strongest walls crack when hit enough times. Even the kindest hearts shut down when they're exhausted. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because you got tired of caring alone. And now, they're left to deal with the consequences of mistaking your love for weakness. They'll talk about how you changed, how you switched up, how you got cold. No, you didn't. You just got wise. You stopped showing up for people who wouldn't even flinch if you went missing. And now they flinch at the thought of you never returning. That's what happens when people wake up to the value of something they thought would wait forever. And while they try to cope with the empty space you left behind, you'll be building quietly. No announcements, no explanations, just growth. They'll see the glow up. They'll hear the whispers. They'll feel the shift in energy when your name comes up. Because when someone finally learns to love themselves the way they used to love others, everything changes. You're not chasing approval anymore. You're not trying to fix people who refuse to fix themselves. You're not watering dead plants hoping they'll bloom. You're focused now, disciplined, cold. Not because you hate, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop accepting half-hearted love and one-sided loyalty. That kind of peace, it rattles people, especially the ones who benefited from your brokenness, especially the ones who don't recognize you anymore because the version of you they controlled doesn't exist anymore. You're gone. You've evolved. And no apology, no excuse, no fake reunion can touch what you've built within. They'll call your name in empty rooms. They'll look for you in others. They'll search for that feeling again, the one you gave them without asking for anything in return. But no one else will match your presence. No one else will know their depths the way you did, and it'll haunt them. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You were consistent. You were the safe place they abandoned for temporary thrills. And now they're stuck with replacements that don't even come close. They'll pretend they're fine, post pictures, force smiles, fill their time with noise. But at night, in that cold silence when the world stops spinning, that's when they'll feel it. That's when the truth creeps in. And they'll remember every time they took your softness for granted, every time they laughed at your pain, every time they chose everyone else over you. And the worst part? They'll have to carry that regret forever. Because when you finally walked away, you weren't bluffing. You were done. You see, the world doesn't teach people how to value a pure soul. It teaches them to exploit it, to drain it, to keep it close for convenience until it starts asking for respect. Then suddenly, you're too much. But you weren't too much. They were too little, too selfish, too immature to understand the value of someone who stays solid, even when they're being torn apart. And now they know. Now they sit in their own mess, trying to piece together a version of you they can live with. But it doesn't exist anymore. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're just done explaining pain to people who only listen when it's their turn to hurt. And when they finally realize they lost something they'll never find again, they'll reach for you. But all they'll find is absence. All they'll hear is silence. And in that silence, they'll finally learn, too late, what you were worth. They'll try to convince themselves it wasn't their fault, that maybe you were too sensitive, that maybe you changed, that maybe you gave up too soon. But deep down, they know the truth. They know you stayed longer than anyone else would have. They know you carried their weight while pretending it was light. They know you bit your tongue, swallowed your pain, and kept choosing them while they were busy auditioning for the attention of others. They'll try to rewrite the story, but facts don't change with perspective. And the fact is, they had someone who showed up, stood firm, gave love that didn't flinch, and they discarded it like it was disposable. And now they want closure. But closure isn't something you get from the person who broke you. It's something you give to yourself when you finally admit you deserved better and walk away without needing revenge or validation. Just silence, just peace. Just a clean break from people who only show love when they sense you're slipping away. They were comfortable with you being broken because your brokenness served their ego. You needing them made them feel important. You chasing them fed their pride. So the day you stopped calling, the day you didn't check in, the day you stopped being available on demand, that's the day they panicked. Not because they loved you, but because they lost control. You see, they weren't attracted to your light. They were addicted to the power they held when they could dim it. And when they realized they couldn't manipulate that switch anymore, that's when they started throwing words like cold, heartless, changed. No, you didn't change. You just stopped allowing your heart to be used like a doormat and dressed it in armor. You learned. And learning hurts. But nothing hurts more than staying the same for people who wouldn't lift a finger to meet you halfway. Now your silence is not just an absence. It's a reminder, a mirror, a warning that not everyone who loves you deserves to keep you. And one day, they'll run into someone who reminds them of you. A flicker in the eyes, a tone in the voice, a gesture that brings back memories like a slap to the face. But it won't be you. It'll be a watered-down version, a glimpse, a shadow, and in that moment, they'll feel a sting they won't talk about, because they'll know that the real thing, the version of love that healed them while they were busy cutting it, doesn't come around twice. That realization, that's the punishment. That slow, burning ache of knowing you once held gold in your hands and traded it for glitter. They'll never admit it. Their pride won't allow it. But it'll show in their eyes, in their energy, in the way they suddenly go quiet when your name comes up. Because what eats at a person more than heartbreak is the guilt of breaking someone who never deserved it. And that guilt is eternal. It sticks. It haunts. And it whispers at night when everything else is silent. But by then, you'll be long gone. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally, unreachable. You won't be angry anymore. You won't be hoping for an apology or a reunion. You'll be too busy living, thriving, moving in silence, with peace as your armor. You'll look back sometimes, not out of sadness, but clarity. You'll realize how far you've come, how much you've grown, and how little you actually needed them to become who you are now. They were the lesson. You were the blessing. They were the test. You were the cure. And in that quiet knowing, there's power. The kind of power that can't be faked, bought, or borrowed. The kind of power that scares the hell out of people who used to control you. And they'll feel it. Oh, they'll feel it. Every time you cross their mind. Every time they see someone try to replicate your presence and fail miserably. And that's when the truth hits them like a hammer. They'll learn too late what you were worth. They won't say it out loud. Their ego won't let them. But they'll stalk your silence like it's a crime scene, scrolling through your old messages, playing back your voice in their mind, wondering how someone who gave so much could vanish without a war. But what they don't understand is that your silence was the war. It was the loudest scream you ever let out. The final stand. Because when a loyal soul stops fighting for you, it means the war is over and you lost. Not because they hate you, not because they want revenge, but because they finally realized they've been bleeding alone on a battlefield where you were the enemy. And when they look back, trying to find the moment it all shifted, they'll see it wasn't sudden. It was slow, silent. 1,000 cuts made from neglect, lies, and disrespect. And every time they said, "It's not that deep," every time they laughed off your pain or gave you less than you gave them, they were twisting the knife. Now the blade is gone, but the wound remains. And they finally realize it was that deep. It always was. The people you gave the softest parts of you to, they'll try to replace you with noise, parties, people, posts, anything that silences the echo of your absence. But it won't work, because nothing hits harder than losing someone who was real in a world full of masks. They'll meet others, sure, but those others won't sit with their silence the way you did. They won't read the pain in their eyes without words. They won't know when to hold them without asking. Because people like you, they're not built, they're born. And once you're gone, every almost feels like a ghost. Every smile from someone else feels forced. Every moment feels off, like the puzzle is missing a corner. You were the piece they didn't even know they needed until the whole picture fell apart. And now, they're stuck with people who look right, but feel wrong. Because no one else can replace the weight of love you carried for them on your back without asking for anything in return. And what about you? You're finally learning to breathe without their approval. to smile without needing their attention. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who couldn't see past their own ego. You stop knocking on doors that were never meant to open. And it's not pride, it's peace. The kind that comes when you've been through the fire and chose not to become bitter, but better. You're not perfect, but you're aware now. Aware of your value. Aware of your energy. Aware of how much you gave to people who only knew how to take. And now that you've set boundaries, now that you've gone silent, they're confused. Because the version of you they were comfortable disrespecting doesn't exist anymore. The old you would have chased, would have begged, would have tried to fix things that broke you. But this new you, this version, it doesn't explain. It doesn't react. It doesn't chase. It watches, learns, and walks away without warning because it knows its worth, finally. One day, they'll be sitting alone, maybe on a quiet night or a long drive, and your name will hit them like a wave. Not because they want to reach out, but because the memory of you is now a mirror, a reflection of who they were when they had you and who they became after they lost you. And they'll see it. The gap, the emptiness, the mistake, and it'll eat them alive. Because it's not that they couldn't love you, it's that they didn't know how. And now they'll spend their days pretending they're fine, laughing too loud, moving too fast, while deep inside they carry the weight of your absence like a ghost that refuses to leave. A silent reminder that they had something once, pure, rare, real, and they destroyed it. And there's no coming back from that. Not really, because some lessons don't come with a second chance. Some people don't come back when they're done. Some goodbyes don't make a sound, but they echo forever. They'll convince the world you were difficult, that you were too intense, that your love came with pressure, expectations, demands. But deep down, they know the only thing you ever asked for was effort, honesty, consistency. The bare minimum for someone who gave their all. You didn't ask to be worshipped. You just wanted to be chosen the way you chose them, loudly, without hesitation. But people don't admit when they failed you. They spin stories. They play victim. Because the truth, that they were careless with something rare, is too ugly to face. So they'll wear masks and fake smiles while trying to find pieces of you in the crowd. But it won't work. Because the people they try to replace you with are built for show, not for war. And when things get real, when the mask cracks, when the glitter fades, they'll remember you. The way you stood firm. The way you stayed loyal. The way you gave love that didn't depend on convenience. That memory, it doesn't leave. It lingers. It scratches at their soul like a debt they'll never repay. And you won't even hate them. You'll just outgrow them. That's the part they don't expect. They're used to people staying stuck, staying small, staying wounded. But not you. You took your pain and turned it into power. You took their silence and turned it into a strategy. You walked through the flames they lit and came out colder, sharper, untouchable. They wanted you broken so they could feel whole. But you learned how to heal without their apology. That kind of growth, it's not loud. It doesn't need announcements. It's seen in your peace, in the way your name no longer trembles when it's mentioned, in the way your presence no longer includes them. That's what truly haunts people. The realization that they no longer matter in a life they once had a front row seat to. And the best part? You're not bitter. You're not plotting revenge. You just stopped trying. You finally understood that being enough for the wrong people was never your failure. It was their blindness. One day, someone else will look at you and not just see your glow. They'll know how much it cost you to shine that bright. They'll admire your strength, but more than that, they'll respect your silence. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of lessons, boundaries, scars. And when you meet someone who listens to your silence and still chooses to stay, that's when you'll realize why nothing ever worked before. Because it wasn't about being loved, it was about being understood. And all those people who came before, they didn't leave because you were hard to love. They left because they couldn't match the depth of your soul. They wanted surface level. You were oceans. They wanted attention. You gave meaning. And meaning scares people who live in disguise. You were a mirror. You showed them who they really were, and they couldn't stand it, so they ran. But here's the thing about truth. It always catches up. And when it does, your name won't just be a memory. It'll be a reminder, a symbol of everything they had, everything they ruined, and everything they'll never get back. So don't wait for closure. Don't wait for them to wake up. Let them sleep on the value of who you were. Let them drown in the silence they once forced on you. You don't owe them a comeback. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself growth. Let your absence speak the language your words never could. Because when people show you who they are, believe them. And when they leave you bleeding and call it just a phase, believe you. Believe your pain, your intuition, your worth. They may never admit it, but one day they'll understand that the day you walked away wasn't when they lost you. It was the day they proved they never deserved you in the first place. And by the time that truth sinks in, you'll be long gone, living the life they said you couldn't build without them. And that's justice. They'll try to mimic your strength one day. They'll try to wear your calm, speak your words, copy the way you carried your pain with dignity, thinking it was just attitude or confidence. But what they'll never understand is that your calm wasn't built in peace. It was born from chaos, from betrayal, from nights where you beg God to just give you a sign that the pain would be worth it, that the tears wouldn't be in vain, that the heartbreaks, the losses, the cold silence, they'd all mean something in the end. You didn't wake up one day calm and detached. You became that way because the world taught you brutally that people only love you when you're useful. That the minute your heart starts asking for something back, respect, love, attention, they vanish. So you stopped asking. You stopped needing. You turned your pain into armor. And now, when they see you cold and unreadable, they think it's attitude. Nah, it's survival. You survived their games. You survived being misunderstood, undervalued, and taken for granted. And now, they don't get access to the version of you they used to toy with. And when they finally hit that wall, when the fake love dries up, when the options they chased start showing their true faces, they'll sit with that realization alone. That the one person who saw their darkness and still chose them is gone. That you weren't there to impress. You were there to stay. You were never trying to be better than anyone else. They were just too blind to see that no one else was even in your lane. You gave them depth in a shallow world, substance in a culture addicted to surfaces. And they threw it away for the thrill of being wanted by people who wouldn't last a season. That's the thing about being irreplaceable. It doesn't hit them when you're around, it hits them when you're gone. When the silence turns into a mirror. When the distractions fade and their mind drifts back to the one who never gave up on them until they left you no choice. That regret, it'll stay. It won't scream. It'll whisper. It'll crawl into their thoughts when they least expect it. And no matter how hard they try, they won't be able to outrun the memory of you. You see, you were never meant to stay where you were disrespected. You were just too loyal, too patient, too hopeful that people would change. But the truth is, they saw how deeply you loved and still chose to treat you like a placeholder. And now your absence is the consequence of that choice. You didn't become selfish. You just started choosing yourself in rooms where you were never truly chosen. And that scares them. Because once a giver turns their love inward, once they learn to protect their peace instead of explaining it, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer an option. You're no longer accessible. And they hate that, not because they miss you, but because they can't use you anymore. They can't rely on your kindness to clean up their mess. They can't expect you to pick up the pieces while they keep breaking things. That's what eats at them. The power they lost, the comfort they took for granted, and the fear that someone else will value you the way they should have from the start. So no, you don't need revenge. You don't need to expose them. Life already handled that. You just keep growing, keep becoming, keep walking forward with silence as your anthem. Because your peace is louder than their apologies. Your success is heavier than their excuses. And your absence, it's doing the talking now. Every room they walk into that feels colder, every conversation that lacks depth, every connection that dies before it even begins, they'll think of you, not with hatred, but with longing, with regret. And that's not your burden to carry. You already did your part. You loved, you stayed, you gave. And when it wasn't enough for them, you left. Not with anger, but with clarity. And now they get to sit with that silence, that void, that gaping space they once called too much. Let them. Because by the time they realize your worth, you'll be too far gone to hear them.